Hey everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're headed up north, way up north, to Grand Portage State Park. I've got maps, articles, even a couple YouTube videos. Looks like a lot of fun.
This one's special. You're talking the highest waterfall in Minnesota. Plus, a major spot for fur trade history. Oh, and it's co-managed with the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. Really unique.
So we're talking the northeastern tip of Minnesota. I'm picturing like big cliffs right on Lake Superior, wind whipping around. You can probably see Canada, right?
You got it. And right there on the edge, the high falls. They drop 120 feet. That's taller than Niagara Falls.
Seriously, 120 feet. That's got to be something else.
Yeah.
What's the geology behind that? How do falls like that even form?
Well, there's these things called diabase dikes. Basically, super hard rock cutting through softer stuff. Over millions of years, the soft rock erodes away. What's left? The cliffs and the falls.
So it's like nature's been sculpting this thing for like forever.
Okay.
But it's not just the height, right? I read something about the water volume being crazy.
Oh yeah, the U.S. Geological Survey estimates that over 3,000 gallons of water go over every second. It's a lot of water. And then in winter, you get these ice formations.
Hold on, ice formations. What happens?
Imagine this. It's the middle of winter. The falls are covered in ice, 10, maybe 20 feet thick. But the water, still flowing underneath, nature's powerful stuff.
Okay, I can picture that. But besides the high falls, what else is there to do at this park?
Trails, for one. There's a paved one right to the high falls, so it's accessible. But if you want more of a hike, there's a 3.5-mile trail that goes to the middle falls.
So there's something for everyone then.
Yeah.
Easy walk or a good workout.
And the views from those trails, don't forget those. Lake Superior right in front of you. On a clear day, you can even see Isle Royale National Park. That's way out in the lake.
We touched on the fur trade earlier. Seems like a huge part of this area's history, right? I mean, that's got to tie into the Ojibwe people too.
You said the park's co-managed with a native tribe, which is super unique. Right. Before any Europeans showed up, it was the Ojibwe, Dakota, and Cree folks living there. And the Pigeon River, full of falls and rapids. Boats couldn't go all the way through. They'd have to portage their canoes and stuff around. That's where Grand Portage comes from. It means great carrying place. And this route became essential during the fur trade. You can actually hike a section of the original 8.5-mile portage.
Oh, wow. To walk in the footsteps of those voyagers. Imagine what that was like, hauling all those furs and goods. No modern gear, just you and the trail.
Quite the workout. So during the fur trade, the Northwest Company set up shop at Grand Portage. Huge trading post. Voyagers, traders, indigenous folks, everyone was there. Furs going one way, European goods the other. Real melting pot back then.
So the park itself is all about the falls and nature, but the National Monument tells the story of the fur trade.
Exactly. Two sides of the same story, but both super interesting glimpses into the past.
Which actually leads perfectly into our next point.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that Grand Portage State Park is co-managed with the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, the only U.S. state park run this way. The land was originally part of the reservation, but got bought up by a private owner. His name was Lloyd K. Johnson. He could have sold it to developers, made a ton of money, but he held on to it, knew it was special.
Wow, sounds like a true conservationist, way ahead of his time.
He was. And then the Minnesota Parks and Trails Council came along, said, hey, how about a state park? He agreed and sold it at a price they could actually afford. And get this, the land is leased back to the state for $1 a year.
Talk about a statement. That shows real collaboration, respecting indigenous land stewardship.
Absolutely. Highlights the Ojibwe connection to this place. Different feel than your average park.
Makes you want to go visit right now. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we should probably talk about that logging boom and bust you mentioned.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other story. Big impact on Grand Portage. Ready to dive in?
I am. But I think we need to save that for part 2 of our deep dive into Grand Portage State Park.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were about to talk logging, how it changed Grand Portage.
Yeah, I mean, the falls were amazing, the fur trade is fascinating, but logging had to leave its mark, right? Both on the land and the people living there.
Oh, for sure. Late 1800s, this whole region was booming with timber. Companies like the Pigeon River Lumber Company, they were harvesting tons of white pine, valuable stuff. You know those diabase dikes we mentioned? They actually caused problems for the loggers.
Huh. I figure the hard rock would have been good for something. What was the problem?
Well, they made it hard to get the logs down the Pigeon River, all those rapids and falls, so the loggers, they had to get creative. building dams, these things called flumes, even steam engines to haul the logs around.
They really wanted that timber, huh?
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of work. But what happened when the trees were gone? Was that it?
Pretty much, yeah. Like a lot of booms, it went bust. Companies moved on, left the place kind of messed up. Clear cutting, erosion. The Ojibwe people really got hit hard. They relied on forests, for food, for their culture.
So a period of exploitation that hurt everyone in the end. Makes you think about how important it is to protect places like Grand Portage now, right?
Absolutely. Conservation's always a fight. We can't take these parks for granted. And speaking of, did you know Highway 61, the one along the North Shore, it was supposed to go right over the Pigeon River at the High Falls.
Wait, what? Right over the falls. That would have been awful.
Totally would have ruined the view, the whole experience. Luckily, some folks saw what was happening. Conservationists, they started a campaign to reroute the highway. They knew the falls were too important to lose.
Good for them. They won that fight, right? It's a good reminder that we can make a difference, even against big companies and stuff. Anyone driving along Highway 61 today, seeing those falls, they should thank those people.
I agree. Shows you what can happen when people work together. Stand up for the places they love. And going back to the Ojibwe, their presence is everywhere in this park. It's not just about the land, but their stories, traditions. It's all connected.
That's what's so special about this partnership, right? It's not just a visit. It's like stepping into a living culture, something you don't get from a brochure.
Exactly. That's why it's worth going beyond just the falls. Learn about the Ojibwe history, their relationship to the land. They're still taking care of this place.
All right, so we've covered the falls, the fur trade, logging, the conservation efforts, this amazing partnership. What else is there at Grand Portage State Park? Any surprises for our listeners?
Believe it or not, even in a place this wild, there are hidden gems. Want to hear about one?
Of course. You got to tell us. But let's save those hidden gems for part 3 of our Grand Portage deep dive. Back again for more Grand Portage. We've seen those awesome falls, learned about the Voyagers, and even dove into the history of the whole area.
And now for the grand finale. We're talking hidden gems. Things even some park regulars might not know about.
Okay, you had me hooked with that hidden gem comment before the break. Lay it on us. What is it?
Ever heard of Mount Josephine?
Mount Josephine. I feel like I have, but can't quite remember.
Well, it's not actually inside the state park, but it's close by, short drive, and the views from up there, some of the best you'll find anywhere.
Oh, right. Yeah, one of the YouTubers we watched, they hiked to the top. Said it was incredible.
They weren't kidding. From Mount Josephine, you can see all of Lake Superior, like this giant inland sea, and then Grand Portage Bay, Isle Royale, even the Suzy Islands.
Man, that sounds amazing. Is it a hard hike to get up there?
It's about 2.5 miles round trip, decent elevation gain. So yeah, it's a workout, but the payoff is worth it.
What if you're not really a hiker, though? Any way to see those views without, all the huffing and puffing?
For sure. There's a scenic overlook right on Highway 61. Gives you a pretty great view of Mount Josephine and the whole landscape.
Perfect. Snap a picture or just relax and enjoy it.
Now, before we move on completely from Grand Portage State Park, any tips for folks who want to check out the National Monument, too? I'm thinking about that reconstructed fur trade depot we talked about.
Yeah. Don't miss that. It's like stepping back in time, seriously. You can walk through the buildings, imagine the Voyagers coming and going, get a feel for what life was like back then. And the Heritage Center, that's a must too, full of exhibits and artifacts about the Grand Portage Band of Chippewa.
Sounds like the perfect way to finish off a trip. Really understand this place. And hey, for the really adventurous types, isn't there a way to actually travel that 8.5-mile portage route? Like the Voyagers did.
There is. You can hike it, even paddle it, follow the original route. It's definitely a challenge, but man, what a way to connect with the history and the land. Really experience it.
So we've seen it all, I think. The huge waterfalls, the stories of the past, those hidden trails, even a mountain with amazing views. What a place. Before we wrap up entirely, I want to leave everyone with a little something to think about. A final thought to take with them. I like it.
Imagine you're one of those Voyagers, hauling furs across that 8.5-mile portage. The weight on your shoulders, the rough ground, mosquitoes buzzing around you, wild animals out there somewhere.
Yeah, quite a different experience than what we have today.
Yeah.
Makes you respect the folks who did that,
Yeah.
Their strength.
It really does. And on that note, I think it's time to say goodbye to Grand Portage State Park. Thanks to everyone for listening to another deep dive.
And don't forget, we've got all the sources we use in the show notes. Maybe this will inspire you to plan a trip of your own.
That's right. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep that sense of adventure alive.